the Affordable Care Act. Obamacare might be doubtful depending on where you live. A study by the Manhattan Institute examines Obamacare's effect on premium costs in 13 states. And you know what? New Mexico sees the nation's highest increase, 130%. With more on this, Chris Jacobs, Center for Health Policy Studies, Senior Policy Analyst at the Heritage Foundation. Chris, thanks for coming in. You know, to be fair here, this study showed that 9 states will have increases, 5 will have decreases. It sort of depends on what your costs are right now. But are you surprised that a state like New Mexico, not a wealthy state, will see increases like this?
Unfortunately, no, Jerry. Candidate Obama, when he was running for office in 2008, promised that his plan would cut premiums by $2,500. Instead, the average employer plan has gone up by over $3,000 since 2009 when the president was elected. So we continue to see these increases, and unfortunately, the mandates in Obamacare will increase costs for most people who buy their own health insurance.
And, of course, the people who are buying this health insurance are the most price sensitive, typically, because they don't have coverage. So it's like a double whammy for those people, wouldn't you say?
That's exactly right. People who buy health insurance coverage on their own, they don't get a tax subsidy from the federal government in most cases. They don't get a subsidy from their employer. They're very price sensitive. So the new mandates in Obamacare could mean the difference between being able to afford coverage and not being able to afford coverage.
You know, we've talked a lot on this show about the so-called navigators who are going to show us the way through Obamacare and explain the insurance exchanges, hold our hand, right? And they just raised the amount of money they're going to use to hire these folks, $67 million. They're finding money under cushions, I think, in Washington to fund this thing. And meanwhile, they're hiring Planned Parenthood, the National Urban League, all the usual suspects to do this. I got to ask you, is this just a big gift to people, organizations, institutions that supported Obamacare in the first place?
Well, it's very concerning, Jerry. First off, the administration unilaterally reduced by 1/3 the number of training hours that navigators will have to complete, from 30 hours down to 20. So with less than 3 full days of training, you can be considered an Obamacare navigator. The standards, navigators are not required to undergo background checks. They can be going out for asking for people's personal financial, bank information, health information, and we don't know. There could be scams associated with this.
This is going to work so well. I can tell already. And of course, I'm joking because it's astonishing to me how this thing's being executed. It's as if nobody thought ahead about how this might work out. I guess nobody did because they didn't read the bill. The other story I wanted to talk to you about today, Politico running a story about the administration spending $12 million on ads in GOP-led states with Republican governors all across the country to push forward Obamacare, to advertise the bill. So it's places like Texas and Florida, Pennsylvania, Arizona, on and on, a dozen red states. What do you make of this? Is this not just a big political move?
Well, they're trying to sell an unpopular law. That's the fundamental issue. And the only thing that's been bipartisan about Obamacare from the beginning has been the opposition to it. We've seen moderate Democrats have abandoned support for the law in the past several months. Max Baucus famously called it a train wreck. The Wall Street Journal shows that disapproval for Obamacare is at an all-time high. So God bless them for trying, but, you know, it's not likely to succeed. And at a time of trillion-dollar record deficits, do we really need to be spending more money trying to sell a law the American people don't want?
Well, it's a great question. And, of course, all the promises out there, whether you're going to save money on your premiums, you can keep your doctor, all of those promises seem to have gone by the wayside now. And people are keeping track. They're keeping score. The problem, Chris, is I don't see how you roll this bill back. I don't see how you take the law back now that entire industries have restructured themselves to accommodate it.
Well, that's why the Heritage Foundation, we support Congress taking action this fall to defund Obamacare before the exchanges and the subsidies go into effect on the exchanges open on October 1st and the subsidies go into effect on January 1st. That is a massive new gusher of federal spending, $1.8 trillion over the next decade that we just can't afford right now.
So what's your expectation on the exchanges quickly? I mean, October 1st is looming. The navigators apparently are kind of being trained, maybe. Is it going to work?
We've seen all sorts of delays and glitches. There are security concerns. I would expect more of the same, unfortunately. This is an unworkable, unfair, unpopular law, and we will see more problems going forward.
Unworkable, unfair, and unpopular. I think you summarized the whole segment in that last bit there, Chris. Thanks for coming on the show. Great to meet you.
Thanks for having me.